interviewing some Apple Corps and Apple Computers representatives to talk about some of the past 3 lawsuits that they've had throughout the years. Right now we have an Apple Corps representative talking about some history about the company.
So I'm a representative of Apple Corps, and today I'm going to be giving some facts and some history about the company.
So how was Apple Corps established?
So Apple Corps was established in 1967 in the United Kingdom by the Beatles. They had $2 million and they didn't want to lose that money in the land revenue. So when Epstein, their manager, died of an overdose in August 27, 1967, that pushed the Beatles to create their company.
What was like the goal of Apple Corps, like their company? What was the goal of it?
The goal was, when they started their company, they didn't have an office, and their office was in NEMS Records. Then, as the months passed, in 1967, they opened their office in London, and their goal was just to help people in the music industry to get their name out there, and just to have the opportunities that they don't have.
What were the eternal struggles of the company?
Well, after Epstein's death, Lennon asked Taylor to be the manager, the general manager, and that created a lot of conflict in the Beatles. So they started having arguments and conflicts, and that led to their separation, the band separation, in 1970.
So I'm a representative from Apple Computers.
How was Apple Computers established?
Apple Computers was established April 1st, 1976 by Steve Jobs and Steve Woloski. Their first computer was Apple I, which ran on the market for $666. After Apple I came Apple II, and that was like the first computer that really started the home computer market, and it started like the uprising in the company, like that was their main invention. The third computer from Apple Computers was the Macintosh, and the Macintosh was advertised on the Super Bowl, and that was like the biggest advertising of Apple Computers that really got their name out there, and that's when they really started to go crazy.
Was there any internal struggles?
Yeah. After the Macintosh was created, Steve Jobs left Apple. He got kicked out of Apple. And after that, like nobody really had any more ideas or anything on computers. So they started really going downhill, and IBM, their biggest competitors, started taking control of the computer industry. And Apple was like really one of the worst managed businesses in the 80s.
And come back?
Yeah, Steve Jobs came back. Actually, he came back and he did the iMac. That's exactly when he came back. He created the iMac, and that was the big like boom in the company again. After that, the company started getting like really big again, and they actually beat their competitors, IBM. This huge investment, Microsoft invested $150 million in Apple Computers to allow them to have the Microsoft Office in every Apple computer. So that was a big thing for the company. This is lawsuit number 1, Apple Corps versus Apple Computers for the trademark violation. So what was the big issue between the trademarks?
Okay, so the whole big issue was that in 1976, Apple Computer came out with the Apple I, and that computer was really successful. 2 years later, Apple Corps noticed that Apple Computer was being successful, and that's when they decided to create a suit against Apple Computer. The Apple Computer and Apple Corps had the same logo, or similar logos. Apple Corps had a green apple, and Apple Computer had a silver apple with the bite taken out of it.
What was the outcome of the case?
In conclusion to the outcome, what ended up happening 5 years later, both companies agreed to go separate ways. Apple Corps into the music industry, and Apple Computer into the computer industry. Sold 5 years later for $80 million, and yeah.
What was the economic and the social impact on the two companies?
Okay, well, it had a major impact in the Apple Computer, both positive and negative, because Apple Computer was limited to only focus on computers. So they lost the fact that they couldn't really go into the music industry. Social impact was that people had to buy 2 systems now. Instead of buying a computer that could play music, they were limited to buying 2 different devices. So that caused a big impact where people had to spend more money in order to do what they wanted to do.
So after the resolution of the trademark lawsuit filed by Apple Corp. Against Apple Computer, the second major lawsuit between the two companies took place in the early 1990s, and this time the cause of the lawsuit was violation of music agreement. The allegation by Apple Corp. Was that all the new software created by Apple Computer were capable of music playback and creation.
What was the outcome of the case?
So in 1991, Apple Corp. And Apple Computer made an agreement over the violation of a music agreement lawsuit. The agreement consisted that Apple Computer would be allowed to use its name to package and sell computers, microprocessors, telecommunication equipment, and computer software, while Apple Corp. Reserved the right to sue Apple Computer if the company ever used its name to sell curated works with the content being basically music. The agreement cost $26 million to Apple Computer in addition to its legal costs.
What was the economic and the social impact on the two companies?
So the lawsuit followed by the agreement between both companies, Apple Corp. And Apple Computer, had a huge impact, but most on Apple Computer. This gives each company's customer bias. For example, an Apple Computer fanatic wouldn't buy a CD from the bidder because of the lawsuit, or a bidder fanatic wouldn't buy an Apple Computer. Apple Computer suffered the biggest hit due to the fact that they weren't allowed to sell music on their computer. This hurt the company economically because they would have to change drafts and ideas of upcoming products.
Introducing lawsuit number 1, that's Apple Corp. Versus Apple Computers on iTunes release.
iTunes Music Store, which would prevent hacking to label companies and stealing their songs. That's what was happening. Like we had Napster, we had Kazaa, and things like that. They gave 2003. Steve Jobs came up with the idea of releasing iTunes Music Store, which would give everyone the choice of, if you didn't want to listen to the whole album, you just pick that one song that you wanted. Now Apple Corp. Thought that broke their agreement in the late 70s, where they agreed, you say music, I say computer. And so Apple Corp. Took Apple Computer once again to the courts.
Okay, what's the outcome of the lawsuit?
So what happened was the judge in England, he decided that this really didn't break any law because of the fact that iTunes wouldn't deliver any material, physical CDs, tapes. They're more of distributors. So that didn't break anything. So in 2006, this is when the case was opened in March 2006, and Apple Corp. Decided that they wanted to take $1 million and close out the case. But Apple Computer decided, no, we can still fight this. And at the end of it all, they won the case. So the judge favored Apple Computers for the first time, and in the cases, Apple did not lose anything, but gain a lot from this case.
And what's the impact?
Well, socially speaking, the impact were like iTunes opened up a whole new world in the music industry, being able to distribute music for anyone at a price 99 cents. Cents went to the producer, label company, the artist. Apple only charged 20 cents for their own delivery, and the rest was profit. So they also this made it possible for small bands and stuff like that to have the world being opened up to them by putting a song in iTunes. They barely charge you anything. Also, the fact of that you don't need a CD anymore for music was something huge. Now that this whole world of digital music was opened up, music was being able to be produced today and released tomorrow. You don't have to wait for manufacturers to do your CDs and stuff like that. So that also killed time, and also kind of fought the huge battle that music industry was having with piracy back in the beginning of the 2000s, where computers were everywhere nowadays. So a lot of hackers had that ability of stealing music. Now music was not being stolen; they were being purchased at a lower price. People didn't have to argue, "Oh, I want just one song." They have the possibility of having one song, the whole album. So every song Apple Computer did not sell the song. The whole album. They sold each song in the album, so you had to buy the whole album for $10, or you could buy each song for 99 cents. You had the choice.
Words are flowing out like endless rain into a paper cup. They slither wildly as they slip away across the universe. Pools of sorrow, waves of joy,